Hello, welcome to a new lesson of Funerary Archaeology. Today we will focus on the human bones, on sexual dimorphism, and assessment of age at death, and of course sex at death. I hope you are all good. I hope you all see and hear me well. This is the sixth lesson of the free course, Funerary Archaeology. Please, if you are interested, contact the guys at Save Cultural Heritage Group. Thank you all again for your kind comments. And if there is any problem or anything you don't understand, please feel free to comment on this live section. Thank you. So, I see new people coming. Hi, Alejandra. Always nice to hear and see from you. So, a little recap. In yesterday's lesson, we talked about the stages which led from a living body to a dead body, and then from a dead body to a skeleton, such as decomposition and so on. Please be aware that I will post much more material about the matter on Google Classroom page of that specific lesson, because since this video are meant to be kids friendly, I cannot post everything, and so put an eye on the topic lesson of yesterday, if you are interested, of course. So, today lessons. No. Okay. I will share my screen with you. New people coming. Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So, I think for today, this one is better. So, what we could and we can learn from human bones, our skeleton is an archive of our lives, such as it takes memory of everything we do concerning our growth as a children, our injuries, even surgical injuries, illnesses that we had, if we are female, if we are given birth or not, the food we ate, the activities, the stress activities we performed. We can find traces of all this in our bones. So to speak, the skeleton tells the story or the osteobiography of an individual life. We have to keep in mind that bones are a living tissue. They have blood vessel, cells that grow and repairs themselves. What are the functions of a skeleton? The skeleton provides structural support for the body, protection of vital organs, and the marrow. And also, it can serve as a storage for minerals for our body. Let's say calcium, for example. So, the bone tissue could be hard or spongy. The hard tissue is called cortical or compact, and it's the outer layer. It's strong, hard, and dense. Oops, sorry. Okay, now you can hear well. It's strong, hard, and dense. The spongy or trabecular or cancellous, it's called by this because of the trabeculae, which are a honeycomb-like structure. It's the inner layer As I said, an honeycomb-like structure, lighter and less dense. We talk about bone cells, and they can be bone-forming, the osteoblast and osteocytes, bone-resorbing, the osteoclast, and then we have the osteoid, non-mineral matrix of collagen and non-collagenous proteins, and an inorganic mineral salt deposit within the matrix. Here you can see a structure of the bone. This is the bone matrix. The very singular base of a bone is the osteon. Here you can see the cortical bone, which is dense and compact, the blood vessel, and the osteoid, which is an unmineralized organic tissue that undergoes calcification and is deposited as lamellae or layers in the bone matrix, is made up of collagen, 94%. The hardness and the strength and the rigidity of bone is due to the presence of mineral salt in the osteoid matrix, which is a crystalline complex of calcium and phosphate, which is called hydroxyapatite. The calcified bones contains about 25% organic matrix, 5% water, and 70% of hydroxyapatite. So there are two types of bones, which could be identified according to the pattern of the collagen forming the osteoid. The first one is the woven bone, which is characterized by a casual organization of collagen fibers and is mechanically weak. What does it mean, mechanically weak? It means that it responds to a stress, to a strength in a weaker mode. Lamellar bone is characterized by a regular parallel alignment of collagen in the sheets, the so-called lamellae, and is mechanically strong. So, we all know that we can grow up, and which means that the bone tissue formation, the osteogenesis, occurs into our species, into our kind, and it's made up by two processes. An ossification, which is intramembranous, which means it lays beneath the tissue, involves the replacement of connective tissue, the membrane sheath, with bone tissue, and result in the formation of the so-called flat bones. For example, flat bones are skull, the mandible, clavicle, or the osteogenesis could happen in endochondral ossification, which happened in the long bones. The long bones are the one of the limbs of the arms, femur, tibia, humerus, radius. Here you can see a long bone. A long bone is made up of two parts, the diaphysis and the epiphysis. The diaphysis, which is the shaft, and the epiphysis, one on top and one on bottom. The one on top is called proximal because it lays towards the center of the body, towards the top. In this case, we have a femur, and the proximal epiphysis is the head of the femur, and the other one, which is down towards our foot, is the distal epiphysis. At the center of the shaft, we have the medullary cavity, which is filled, as you can see in the figure, by the yellow bone marrow, which is very important. On the spongy bone in the head, on the proximal epiphysis, often is produced blood cells. There is the so-called red marrow. The bone of the diaphysis are composed by dense and hard compact bone, while the narrow area that contain the epiphyseal plate or the growth plate lies in the center, which is the metaphysis. So when the bone stops growing, approximately around 21 years old, but is an approximation, the cartilage is replaced by osseous tissue, and the physeal plate became an epiphyseal line. The medullary cavity, which you can see here, has a membranous, it's made of a membranous lining, which is called the endosteum, and inside, of course, osteum, oste, bone from Latin, where the bone growth, repair, and there happen also remodeling of the bone. The outer surface of the bone is covered by a fibrous membrane called the periosteum, or the around membrane. The periosteum contains blood vessel, nerves, and lymphatic vessel to nourish all the bones. Also tendons and ligaments attached to the bones at the periosteum. The periosteum covers the entire outer surface of the bone, except where the epiphyses meet other bone to form joints. There they are covered with articular cartilage. You have to keep in mind that flat bones, for example, the one from the cranium, happen to have a spongy part, a spongy bone, which is called diploid, which is lined on either side by a layer of compact bone, such as a sandwich, so to speak. So, after a biology full lesson of our bones, here you can see a picture, a sketch about the main bones of the body. You can see them all in full detail on the Google Classroom page of the course. Some infos, I don't know if you are aware that when we are born, we have more than 300 soft bones. During our childhood and adulthood, all these bones grow up and fuse together, some of them, and an adult skeleton has got 206 bones. Here are some facts, some number. We have 32 teeth, 33 vertebrae. Here you can see the depiction of our vertebrae. We have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, 5 lumbar, 5 sacrum, and 4 coccyx. So, when we encounter a skeleton during one of our field campaign, and we want to know to whom this bone were once upon a time, we have to estimate an age, a gap of age into which we can put our individual. And to estimate age, we have to keep in mind some categories that some researchers and anthropologists, such as Wickstra and Ubelacker, I don't know if I pronounced their name well, in 1994, theorized. These are our categories which we all fall into during our lifespan. Fetal is before there, refers to the time where we are in utero, such as before birth. Infants, from the exact moment of birth up to 3 years old. Children, to 3 from 12 years old. Adolescence, it's the range between 12 and 20. Young adult, as myself and many of you, lies between 20 to 35. Middle adult, from 35 to 50, and old adults, anyone which is older than 50. Other, such as Roxanne Deacon Armstrong, more recently, in 2011, said that these categories are not the one to take into consideration, but to be more specific, we have to look at the central fusion and degenerative traits. So the adolescence came when the eruption of permanent canines happen. Young adult, when we have diffusion of all the long bones. Middle adult, when we have diffusion of the medial clavicle. And old adult begins at the degeneration, which is not so clear because we all know that degeneration happens from many factors, such as, for example, pathological states, vitaminic deficiency, vitaminic loss, calcium loss, so it is also genetical. Could happen because we constantly repeated overstressed a certain part of our body. Let's consider, for example, the so-called, I don't know how to say in English, the elbow, the tennis elbow. It is a word in English, I don't know, the first time, and so on. So I think that many anthropologists still relies on the categories created by Wickstra and Belaker. So we also refer to any individuals which is not adult as a subadult. A subadult age, it could be very easy and difficult to recognize. Easy when you find out the cranium, the mandible, and of course the teeth and the tooth. And also when you have a bigger amount of osteological bones and features during excavation, which is often not the case because many times during excavation, unfortunately, children, even fetal, subadult in general, adolescents, are not treated well. And so when we have the tooth and the teeth, we can use this table, which again was made up by Ubelaker in the 1989, which look at the tooth formation and eruption, and the development of eruption of dentition is one of the most accurate method of assessing age. So we can see that little gems of teeth and tooth happens at 5 months in utero, and then around 1 year up to 6 to 1 year, I will say, the first teeth erupt, and then at around 6 years old, it's 6 to 7 years old, we have the eruption of non-decidual teeth, and so on, up until to 21 years old, when all our teeth have erupted. So it's a guided process, and the certainty is because of this. It's also accuracy. Another method is diffusion of bones. You can see here which part happen at different times. For example, let me see. The medial part of the clavicle happen at a range of age estimated between 16 up to 23 years old. The head of the femur at around 18, 19 years old, and so on. What happened to the age estimation of adults? We are different methods, and of course, as I said before, since age estimation of adults is based on alteration to the bones that happened because of the normal process of aging, and it's based on the process of degeneration, they required skills and years of training because of this. You have to have a good eye to look into them. Skeletal generation is sometimes difficult because of the potentially large number of areas, including all the vertebrae, ribs, joints, and articular surfaces. An additional concern is that the generation is not a straightforward process, and there is quite a large amount of variation between individuals in how the skeleton respond to age-related degeneration. The articular surfaces of bones, the pelvic symphysis and teeth wear, however, are the most common and accurate region to be analyzed to assess age. Lovejoy, in 1985, postulate a table in various stages of tooth decay and wear. You can see on the left here from normal and completely healthy teeth from down to the center. On the right, the sign of wear. Where is all black, it means that all the wear and all the decay happen, and there is no tooth dimorphism. The sexual estimation of adults, and I will say of adults because currently it's very difficult to assign sex to subadults, especially in the younger ages, because they are not up to their age, and they're not overshift in hormones, which are related to the development of a secondary sexual characteristic. And this happened to the changes in the pelvic girdle because of the reproductive abilities of the female. So birth can happen. So the secondary characteristic involve the analysis of differences in size and shape of cranial morphology, or in general differences in overall body size. Also, because the changes in the pelvis, in the pelvic girdle, there are other side effects that happen in the angle and in the shape of the femur. But I would say that the two main points in the whole body, where we can estimate easily the sex, are the pelvis and the head, the cranium. or the school. Here you can see, oh, sorry, too much. Generally, male bones and male skulls, but male bones in general are heavier and thicker, and they have a strong muscle attachment, and they are more defined and more visible compared to the one of females. Females are very light, very petite compared to the one of males. So first classification is this. There are many differences, starting from the forehead, eyes, the jaw, even the nasal pyramids, and many others. You can see here the difference between the top one, which is a man one, a male, and the second one is a female. The skull of the male is characterized by a supraorbital ridge, so-called supraorbital bridge, which is this part here between your eyes, up where your nasal bone starts. This part here is the glabella, is more obvious, and the eyes are more quadrangular, and the margin of the orbit, the margin of the upper eye, is more blunt and rounded. And here you can, this characteristic you can see well, but also if you happen to touch a skull, you can feel it, what I mean by blunt and rounded. Also, the mandible is very characteristic. The angle of the mandible, or the gonial angle, is more vertical, up to 90 grades. And this bone, this part of a bone, which is protruding, and you can touch here behind your earlobe, this part and this specific part, is the mastoid process. And in men, is generally larger and thicker. Also, the nuchal crest at the very base of your skull, if you touch, you can see there is an indentation in the back of it. This is the nuchal crest and is more obvious. Also, the mental eminence, the very point of this, is more defined and broad and wider. The female has the orbit which are more rounded. The upper eye socket orbit, or the supraorbital margin, is sharper. You can see here, if you touch again with your finger, you could feel it can resemble a blade. The nuchal crest and the mastoid process are so much smaller, if not absent, such as for the nuchal crest. The angle of the mandible is softer and it's wider than 90 degrees. And the mental eminence is more pointed. Also, the forehead is much less sloped and way more rounded compared to the one of a male. Here you can see, are all the grades from 1 to 4 to 5, grades of masculinity and femininity that could happen Number 3 is medullary, generally. If any of those characteristics happened to lay in one of the fascias between 3 to 1, you are moving toward a female feminization, while on the contrary, on the other side, you can have a masculinization. It's very schematic. Many times it's not that the case, of course, because we are all individuals, we are all different. Each one of us has his own characteristic. Many times you can encounter a school which could have what can seem masculine characteristic and female characteristic at the same time. For example, a not so visible nuchal crest, but a very wide mental eminence, or a very wide mastoid process. But you don't have to take only one or two of those signs into your consideration, but you have to take all of them up until you are a full picture of what you are looking at. What about the pelvis? As you can imagine, female pelvis is way bigger than the one of a male. You can clearly see here the upper view and to the frontal view. Then you can see each part that composed the pelvis. You can see the angle of a female is wider, while the angles of a man is, of course, narrower, because of the men don't give birth. This angle is called supraorbital angle. It's more acute in men. The inlet or the pelvic canal is narrower because, again, they don't need space for a growing baby. The body of sacrum for that specific case is larger, and it's pointed more towards the inside, like this, while the one of female is more like this, because again, there is to create more space in the pelvic inlet to help the baby birth. So the pubis has a shape which can resemble a triangle, and the ale, that part of the sacrum, are smaller. As I said before, the pelvic inlet of a female is wider. From every part that you look at is way wider. The subpubic angle is wider and obtuse. The pubis is more rectangular. And the body of the sacrum is smaller, and the sacrum, as I said before, is not curved into the inside, or rather does that shape. And the ale of the sacrum are larger to help during a stress period, such as the pregnancy and all that happened into a female body, to sustain better the weight. So these are also, you can see here, this part underlined by the arrow, which you can see right there on the other side. You see this little thingy that happened close to the sacrum. This is the greater sciatic notch. And from this view, you can see better. It's wider on the female and narrower on the male. So, this is a long lecture. I hope you all find it interesting. Sorry for the light, the sound went down. And if you have any curiosity or something to ask, feel free to do so. I will be online for more than just a couple of minutes more. I know that many of you requested shorter videos, such as 15, 20 minutes, but this subject of today's lesson is very dense, and I couldn't do otherwise. So if you have any comments, I'll wait. What do you think about today's lessons? Any suggestion? Or did you know the number of bones that we have in our body? Did you know any of these? How to assess age or sex after death? When you encounter a skeleton or some bones, spare bones, during an excavation? Let me know. So if there are not any questions, again, I thank you all for your attention, and please check it out on Classroom, because I will put in the next days, in the next hour if I can. I don't know, because I'm not home. So in the next days, I will put many other lectures, many other readings for you to follow and to sustain your study. Okay, thank you. See you tomorrow, same time. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.